Welcome to the EnVibe Life Conversations podcast with Amy Parker and Cheryl Dunn. By tuning in, you are joining a community that will inspire you to increase balance, wellness, and joy in your life. We will offer expert information and insightful conversations to help us all on our journey to live more in vibe. For more information and articles, remember to also check out our website at envibelife.com. That's EnVibeLife.com. We're grateful that you are here. Welcome to EnVibe Life Conversations with Amy Parker and Cheryl Dunn. And today we are doing our wrap-up podcast, I guess you could call it. And we're going to talk about the last season. Two seasons now.
2 seasons. I can't believe it. And oh my gosh, I realized what I forgot to do before we started, and that's counting the number of episodes we've done, because we're getting really close to 100 if we haven't hit 100, right, which we should probably be celebrating.
Yes, exactly. We've hit a lot.
We've done a lot, and the first thing I want to say to make sure we mention it is that as we did last summer, we're going on a summer hiatus again. So this will be the last podcast we are recording and airing for season 2.
Yeah, super exciting. So today what Amy and I'd like to do is recap this past season, talk about some of our favorite podcasts that we had, some of our favorite guests, and some of our lessons we've learned. Mm-hmm. So do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Okay, so here's the first thing I'll say, and this isn't a specific podcast, but I think one of the things I've learned and been really grateful for is our abundance of amazing guests.
Yes.
And topics. And I remember before we ever started this, I don't know if you remember this, Cheryl and I had this one friend/counselor we met with who helped us really just with our relationship and even our motivation for the business and our mission and things like that when we started. And one of the things we expressed to her about being nervous about was who's going to come on? Who are we going to interview? Are we going to have enough guests? And we talk about abundance a lot on this podcast and manifesting abundance and attracting abundance into our lives. And she said, let me put you with this thought. I feel that you will have an abundance of guests. Trust in that. And she was right.
She was so right.
That came back to me over and over this season because for those of you who've done podcasts, and some have, some haven't, first of all, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
We had another guest tell us the average podcast lifespan is 7 episodes, and exactly because it's a lot of work, and
you don't realize that, so you're into it.
Work to schedule it, work to find the guests, work to cultivate it, work, and then the editing of it alone, and everything that goes with it. But because we're now in season 2 and have the catalog of podcasts we had a lot of amazing guests approach us. People we wouldn't have otherwise met or known or heard of. And
some we did hear of and we're shocked, like, really?
They're reaching out to us? Oh my goodness, wow. And some of those repeat guests that we loved from the first season, very ready and willing to come back with us again. And that was so much fun. And I just had and have such gratitude for that and appreciation for... Well, let me put it this way. When sometimes Cheryl and I might say, are we doing the wrong thing? Or the right thing? Is it worth what we're doing? Is it worth the work? And we keep going back to, these are messages that need to be put out in the public conversation. And there are people out there who want to hear them. And also there are people whose messages need to be put out. And if we can provide a forum and a format for that happening, we just feel so blessed to be doing that and be able to do that. So for me, when that was happening, it was just over and over and over confirming these are messages and people that need to be put out there, and we're helping to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think I had such gratitude for that.
Yes, definitely. So I want to go back and recap one of my favorite, there's many, I don't really have a favorite guest.
Hard. I know.
But I kind of want to highlight some of the guests and some of the things that we learned along the way.
Okay.
And one of my things to be grateful for and what I learned along the way is when you're doing this, sometimes you think, is anybody really listening? We do get some comments here and there, and we get some likes and some shares and that kind of stuff. But always when you're doing your job, and it's it can be, we're not every day interacting with people face to face.
We're sort of speaking into a computer most of the time, which is what we're doing at this moment.
Exactly. So you get curious of what the other half, who's really out there listening, because we don't see it all the time. But we were approached by one of our listeners to be on the podcast, and I'm so grateful for that, because it really it was great to hear what they were and were not learning from us, and what they got to speak about. And that was, I don't know, such an opportunity. So we did not get to do that in season 1, and in season 2 we were able to bring on a listener.
Right, and we said we'd do it more, and we haven't, so we need to go back and do that. And just so you know, her name is Cara Beth McLeod. Go listen to the podcast, because it didn't just end up being what she did and didn't learn. She had an amazing story of her own that she was very graciously willing to share with us and our audience. And so
definitely learned from her.
We learned so much from her.
Yeah, definitely. It was just way more than we intended it to be. It was just great. And that's one of the things that Amy and I feel like we've learned along the way. We bring these guests on, and we have an idea of where we think it's going to go and what it's going to do. And it usually, 99.9% of the time, it is more than we could have ever asked for. As far as information that we get, information that we're giving, all of that is just, we always turn off the podcast and go, wow, that was great. Don't you feel that?
And so, okay, I don't know. Let me see. Can I say the same thing about a favorite podcast or guest from the season? I think I'm going to string together a few of them. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Like when we finished speaking to Eloisa Mina, or we finished speaking to Dr. Tanisha Wards, or from Lahana Vigliano, I leave that going, like, if I was feeling down about what I'm doing, or sort of that unmotivated feeling of, oh, I have to edit this when we're done, or I have to do this, I've left some of those podcasts feeling on such a high that it has motivated me and propelled me forward. Now, that being said, I feel that some of the information I've gotten from Eloisa is changing the way I look at eating and food.
Completely. And I feel like I give her name out a lot when people start
I do too.
Asking and questioning, what do you recommend? What do you feel? We get asked that a lot. Like we're nutritionists, which we are not.
Right.
I mean, we try and eat good for our own selves, but by no means that Amy and I have any qualifications to be giving out nutrition advice. So I always go back to one of those podcasts and say, hey, listen to this. Right. Listen to her. Listen to this. Because I feel like the information all of them have given us is how to be healthier. Not necessarily like, how are you going to be skinnier? How are you going to look like a supermodel? How are you going to be this? How are you going to be a size 2? No, none of it is about that. It's like, how are you going to feel good?
Right.
Right?
Which is what gets you to living in vibe.
Yes.
Really.
Yes.
How do you feel about yourself? Mm-hmm. Even Lord Gavin.
Oh, right.
Came from that angle. If you're feeling good about yourself, you're going to be putting out a positive attitude. That's going to bring more positive things to you and keep you in that energy of affirmation and positivity and abundance.
Correct. Since you brought up his name, I do want to say again how much I was like...
Did I say Lord Gavin or did I say Lord Byron? I don't know.
No, you said Lord Gavin. You said it correctly.
That would be a really special podcast. But
no, you said it good. You said it correct.
Okay.
But how he told us to do the double wash of the face at night.
Yes.
I have been doing that faithfully. I thought,
I have too.
Really, that is great advice, you know?
Well, and yesterday I went out and took the dogs for a walk. I didn't wash my face till about 4 o'clock because I don't even remember what I had, but I had something late in the day. And I thought, oh my gosh, I messed up. I was supposed to do this first thing in the morning and just repeat it after I started sweating, after I worked out and took the dogs for a walk. Okay, so I will say that probably the podcast, and it's from season 1 and season 2, that I have forwarded to the most people is Karen Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
Our friend Karen Cooper, who's a psychic medium and intuitive healer. And if you have a session with Karen, which I'd highly recommend, She does them online. You can Skype or FaceTime, and trust me,
or in person if you're in Austin.
Person if you're in Austin. But even being in Austin, I've gotten very accustomed to because she is someone I personally meet with on a fairly regular basis. It's so easy to do it online, and I create my own little sanctuary in this exact same room, and it's a very safe environment for me. And she, has taught us about intuition and trusting your intuition and how it's sourced from God. And she has just enlightened me in so many ways, both on and off the podcast. She is probably my most frequent share to people. Hi, it's Amy. If you're enjoying the content you're hearing on this podcast, then Cheryl and I hope that you'll go check out our website at EnVibeLife.com. On the website, you will find tons of articles, our archive podcast, links to our social media, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, all where you can find more information on curating the life you most want in order to live in Vibe. We hope you'll check it out.
I also have found I gauge a lot of this by people and other clients that I know when they go utilize the services of the people in our podcast. Right. I've had many clients who now see Karen on a regular basis.
That's fantastic.
So that lets me know she's doing something special, and what she's putting out there and what we're putting out there within EnVibe Life is really touching people. So that's definitely one that was pretty important. Another one, we talked to, I guess, Amy's practice where you go for women's health.
Dr. Jukes. We talked to Kelly Porter on hormones.
A lot of people found that information
that is
very valuable.
Probably close to Karen on my most shared.
Yeah, very valuable information. I think that was something, I think sometimes even Amy and I are surprised. We're like, really? People want to know? And then bam, you get it out there and it's great information.
And that is actually one of our most downloaded podcasts. I think the one with Kelly on hormones.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so
menopause and perimenopause, I think, was the topic, but it was, we talked a lot about
We talked a lot about different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. One that we were really excited to have on and turned out to be such a great podcast, Bob Doyle.
That I couldn't believe.
Yes.
That's one where I just got goosebumps now even thinking about it, because I've read The Secret, I've watched The Secret for so many years, and I've read so many things, and I've seen his name, and I've seen him so many times. When his team reached out to us about booking him, that hit me in the face of I'm in the energy I'm supposed to be in somehow here. Mm-hmm. So that was an affirmation to me.
Yeah, it was kind of like the intention behind this podcast was to get out his message from many different angles. And when he reached out to us, we were like, holy moly, this is exciting.
All right, so now let's jump ship just a little bit. And talk about just maybe our personal growth, not necessarily pointing to a specific podcast. Is there anything you can think of to talk about or say and how you've grown in season 2 specifically, or even since we've started EnVibe Life?
Well, I have grown tremendously since we've started EnVibe Life. I think the biggest thing that I catch myself talking to myself, or what I'm learning is when something triggers me or upsets me, or even if I see conflict or something like that, I try and always make my first reaction to look into me. Like, what am I thinking? Why is this bothering me? Why, I ask myself the questions instead of pointing the finger at, I can't believe they did this or they did that. Instead of pointing the finger, I look back at myself first. That I feel like has been a huge tool. Imagine maybe in season 2 more than season 1.
Here's the trick, or the key though, because one of the things I was going to say, and we've talked about this Cheryl and I have talked about judgment for years, since before we started EnVibe Life, and that I believe that most people judge themselves more harshly than others. And I also believe those people who judge others harshly, it's because they're judging themselves. So that still goes back to you're probably judging yourself more harshly than others. And here's the balance with what you said. Like, one of the things I've had to find myself is when something does trigger me.
Yeah.
And then I'm reflecting upon what it is in myself that needs to be healed, doing that in a non-judgmental way.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Where I don't say what's wrong with me,
right?
Which would be a judgmental question, but say, what do I have to learn here? What is my opportunity to learn here?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm still not, like, I still catch myself in that moment of judgment before I flip over and realize, okay, I need to understand the gift of this or the grace of it. And as hard as it is right now, particularly if you've had a difficult situation with another person or a member of your family has, or you have for yourself, or a health situation or whatever, to not judge. Because even with health situations, sometimes we judge ourselves like, oh, well, if I hadn't eaten that, or if I hadn't done whatever. And really that I think has been and continues to be one of my number one lessons, is dropping that judgment of myself.
Yeah, I'm still working on that. Even this morning, I was sitting in line waiting to vote, and I looked at somebody doing something, and my first reaction was, in my head, I said a very negative judgment of that person. And I'm like, why are you judging them? It could be a completely different reason why they made that choice versus what my first reaction is why they made that choice, which was, and then I was like, that was really just stupid for me to have that thought.
Which means you judged yourself then.
I did. Here's an interesting concept that I've been thinking about a lot, because we are having elections with our school board and different things going on. This information that we are talking about with each other and how much value we found in it. Wouldn't it be amazing if this was part of the curriculum that our children were taught from the beginning? Like, it took me to be 40 years old to even dive into any sort of self-help.
And it is a little bit, some schools have social emotional learning as part of their
Ours does too.
Curriculum. Yeah. Some have wellness and mindfulness programs as part of their curriculum. But, what I don't know. I don't know if we want to go down this path. It's hard because the kids are also learning what they're learning at home.
Yeah.
And so many of us are in these patterns. And I'm not, I don't mean that in a judgmental way.
No.
I mean, so many of us as adults and parents have these patterns set in us, and like it or not, our kids are learning the patterns they see in us. So but we're all here to teach each other. So
I'm reading this amazing book that my son, my 15-year-old, actually brought to me, that he's reading in one of his business classes. He's like, hey, Mom, I think you'll like this book. Read it. And it's called Outliers. And it really talks about all of these outlying, consequences of different things, like why we have different emotions and different feelings, and how some of that goes so back into our ancestry, the way we react to things, and has absolutely nothing to do with our life now. But it's just something like you're talking about that you're ingrained with, and so that's a great book to kind of put some perspective when you're looking at things, and maybe your tendencies to pass judgment on it, but just think about where that person came from and what their experiences are and what led them to where they are at this moment.
All right, so here's another thing. I think you will say you have learned this season too, or I will say this is our second year of EnVibe Life. It's really our third, because we had started EnVibe Life before the website went live or the podcast went live. So we've been working on this project for 3 years now. It's almost the anniversary. It was, I think, May of 2019.
Yeah.
When we would have hatched this idea and business plan. And it's resiliency, because we have had some things that have worked and some things that haven't. We had a lot of stuff we tried in that season 1 year. So our second year, that we had to change in season 2 and rely on ourselves a lot, where we weren't sure we had some moments during season 2, we weren't sure we were going to complete season 2 and make it to May, which was always our goal. Last year we went into about June. This year we said, let's end around Memorial Day. So let's have a little bit longer hiatus, or at least a June and July hiatus when our kids are out of school. And so the fact that we were, first of all, God, the universe, gave us what we needed, and the guests we weren't sure we were going to be able to get. And I think we've had some of our favorite guests these last few months. And we've done it. we've done it. We've gotten here, and now we've learned more for going forward. And, you've had some challenges. I've had some personal challenges. You've had some personal challenges. So it wasn't just business challenges. We've had a lot where there were times I think both of us felt like, I just don't know. I just don't know if I can do it.
Yeah.
And we supported each other through that. I think there were times when I would have been ready to hang it up and you talked me off the cliff, and vice versa. And so, again, that goes back to the importance of having these relationships.
Definitely. So what would you say one of your biggest life lessons over this EnVibe 3 years, or even over the last season?
I think getting to know myself and my strengths more. I've really, even in season 2, I've realized, I'm not really just a podcast co-host. I'm a producer. I wouldn't have put that on my resume before, and now, I can and I should. I've started viewing. I've been able to step away enough to look at the skills I've brought to the table and what I've done, and realize where my strengths are and aren't. And for this or other ventures going forward, even what I want to be putting my time into more or less, and what I ought to be, maybe even versus what I have. And so I'm a much more informed businesswoman, I think, about myself and what I want to do, for sure. I think I have learned also how much I love communicating like this, and reaffirmed my desire to, I don't want to say change people's opinions, but give people things to think about.
Yeah.
Like that. Maybe it does, maybe it affirms their opinions, maybe it changes it, but to put things into the public discourse that give people something to think about.
Yes.
And how much I like doing that.
Yeah. I think that's invaluable. And I think that's a really great skill, is to look at yourself and figure out what your strengths are. That's a good tool in a life, because there's a lot of times that I feel like people get stuck in jobs because of it just fell in their lap, and then they get on a rut and they just stay with it because of the security of it, instead of really taking the value of what is good, what they're learning from it, if that's where they need to be, if that's where their purpose is. Really ask yourself those questions. And if you're not good at something, have somebody else do it. And that's okay, And
maybe you should. Or even if you're good at it, but you're better at other things, that's okay too.
Yes.
And listen to that, learning to listen to that voice inside you saying, I don't want to do that. And, sometimes you have to, especially when you start a business, right. But, really having that knowledge. What would you say you've learned about yourself in these 2 years?
What have I learned about myself? I haven't put any thought into this. So I think I definitely have learned to put myself out there more.
Right. That too.
I've put myself out there and been okay with that, and less apologetic about what should or shouldn't be. I don't think that's my choice in that matter. I think that's the biggest
Any regret to say?
Yeah, I don't.
Do you have any regrets?
No, I don't.
I would say that what you just said might be my regret. If I could go back and do anything over these last 2 years, we'd be putting ourselves out there more. But it took us. EnVibe Life has been a healing for both of us in that regard. Yeah. I mean, EnVibe Life is a lesson for us, and I think for both of us together and individually, that has been one of the lessons that. Yeah. Being vulnerable and putting yourself out there, and we continue to work on that.
And when you put yourself out there, it's not all cheers.
Right.
There are definitely people that don't agree with.
For sure.
And close people have been like, don't really like what you did.
Right.
And so but just being authentic and true and putting it out there, giving people another perspective, giving people food for thought, that's been invaluable. And I'm really glad that we've done that. So
me too. Any plans this summer you're excited about as we go into our hiatus?
We're going to Whitefish, Montana, and we're going to be doing a bunch of hiking. And so it's been interesting to see. I exercise a lot and I'm in pretty good cardio shape, but to watch the rest of my family trying to get in cardio shape, because I have quite warned them that when we get there and they're falling behind, I'm not waiting. So they've got about a month left to get themselves in shape. So it's interesting to see who's, taking my threat seriously and who's not. So that is one big summer plan. We're doing that with our family, and that should be fun.
Well, I think a large part of my summer is going to be spent touring colleges with my junior in high school.
Yeah.
Fun and not fun. I mean, it's really exhausting to do that. I've done it with the other two, but he is still very all over the place in what he wants. So I think it's really valuable for him to see some different places and environments and geographically different locations where he could live and what that would mean. And, plus I did it with my other two. And so even though I feel like I know more now, he still doesn't. And he deserves my time in that way as well. So
I love that.
That's going to be a lot of my summer, I think. And hopefully John and I are going to get a little beach trip in the middle of it as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'll be good. Well, this has been a great season. Thank you all for listening. We have thoroughly enjoyed putting it out there and putting ourselves out there and bringing on all these guests. So if you have found any information that we have put out today that you have more questions, please reach out to us on our social media or even on our website. You can find us there and we'll get back to you. We're taking a podcast break, but we are still available.
And thank you so much for joining us. Please know how grateful we are for every single person who listens to even a few minutes of this. It's an honor for you to allow us to share this information with you. And, I just want to leave you with the wish to really step back this summer yourself and put some things on the calendar you enjoy. Things are opening up a little bit more for travel now. And so it's getting a little easier and safer to move around, I think. And so hopefully you'll take advantage of that time for yourself and those people you love.
Thank you for joining our conversation today. For more information or to learn more about EnVibe Life, we hope you'll visit us at www.envibelife.com. You can find links and show notes for this episode on our podcast page. Please like, follow, and leave a review for our podcast. We hope that you will listen again soon.